200 years ago. They had singing, dancing, of course, none of which did I perform, so that made it much better. They also had food from that time period. So I just want to say thank you as a citizen for the efforts that they put forward to make that program truly something special. That's all. I wanted to make sure I brought that up. I wanted to do it in public comment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. You have to go over with that board member 5 minutes and board member.
No, M-I-K-E, not M-E-L.
All right.
You know, you're well known and the entire audience starts laughing when you say that.
I'm not sure there's a difference. Seeing nobody, nobody else will close.
Anybody else?
First round. And we will move on to presentations. Item A, comprehensive plan timeline update. Mr. Fortune.
And this is going to be a very brief update for the board. You are aware that we are getting underway on the process to update the comprehensive plan. You go ahead, Eric. Just a real quick background. This is some old information, but just to remind everybody, the board did update the plan on September 18th. It was a 2024 update of the 2015 plan, basically a readoption of the 2015 plan with changes to 3 sections. So we're now about to start an update of a comprehensive update and create a new plan. I'm envisioning this process taking 12 to 18 months, just depending on the extent of changes made to the document. You can go ahead, Eric. Just to remind everybody, some of the code requirements, 15.2-2223 charges the planning commission with preparing and recommending the plan. And the plan, of course, covers physical development of a territory within the jurisdiction and charges the local governing body, in this case, the board, with adopting the plan. So the planning commission prepares it, recommends it, the board adopts it. And then 15.2-2230, at least once every 5 years, plan is to be reviewed by the planning commission to determine whether it needs to be updated. And these are a few more requirements. I went into these a little more depth with the planning commission, but just some things. If you look at the plan when it comes to you and you see some things and wonder why they're in there, here's some of the requirements. A transportation plan, and the plan has a transportation section, but it'll need to be updated. VDOT has to review it. Areas and implementation measures to provide affordable housing. And then for plans amended after July 1st, 2021, you're required to address manufactured housing as a source of affordable housing. And then the last one, strategies to implement broadband infrastructure, quote, sufficient to meet current and future needs of residences and businesses and locality, unquote. So we had a meeting planning commission in October. We talked with the group. Just so you know, normally I'd like to do this in a work session. Right now, that's not possible given the workload. So I'm kind of covering this as part of the regular planning commission meetings. Hopefully, after the first of the year, we'll actually move this up to the work sessions and get more in depth in this. But we had some questions we wanted the commission to answer. We're basically going to keep the existing format and just update everything. For public input, my experience has been you get a little more bang for the buck if you do community meetings first and then use the input from the community meetings to draft your surveys. So we're looking at 5 community meetings, late January, early February, dates still to be determined. 1 for each district, going to do at least 1 or 2 on a Saturday. And we're going to have some input exercises for each meeting. Basically a mapping exercise and something called PARK, which stands for preserve, add, remove, and keep out. And as far as the committees, the group decided to keep the same committees as before, so we will get those reappointed hopefully in the next couple of months. Go ahead, Eric. So the next steps, again, just work on logistics of the community meetings. I have staff in the house I've already coordinated with. We're going to start working on parts of the plan that are data intensive and don't require public input. There's quite a bit of data that will need to be updated. And of course, reestablishing committees. So those are the immediate next steps for the process. And I believe that's all I have. So I'll take any questions.
Questions?
I mean, wouldn't it make sense to have an economic committee as well, too?
I can propose that.
It seems like that's kind of important.
Yeah, I can definitely propose that to the commission.
given some of the mandates that are coming up, you might want to have a housing committee as well too.
I'll definitely propose those.
And we'd be trying to make use of those who serve on these most recent committees.
I mean, I would think so. I mean, I've been in touch with some of them. I mean, I guess it'll be the planning commission's call, but I don't see any reason not to
Yeah.
use some of the same individuals.
I mean, there's people who participated who kind of felt like they, as you know, kind of worked it and kind of got to a point where we had to turn in something, so they felt incomplete. So not include those people might be a faux pas.
Understood.
Anything else? All right, thank you. Item B, undeveloped parcel map.
Yeah, this is just, Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is just a quick update here again, and this is kind of goes back to as part of your 2024 Board of Supervisors work plan under rural preservation E2, the board requested to provide a report on undeveloped parcels in the county in size categories such as greater than 1,000 acres, 500 to 1,000, 200 to 500 acres, and et cetera. So just a couple notes. So the board, you have the map in front of you, and I'll bring the map up after I just kind of go through some of this. So a couple items to note. When you look at view the map legend, you'll note that the county does not have any undeveloped parcels greater than 1,000 acres. So that's one thing. Also, two, we also decided to limit parcels to anything greater than 10 acres. And then also when you look at the map legend, there is a number in parentheses next to the kind of parcel sizes. That indicates how many parcels are in that kind of size range. And then also you'll see in the map, there's some large undeveloped parcels, and some of them are in conservation easements that has a hash marks. And some of them you see with like white and blue. And I think some of them you see with like the red and white. Again, that just denotes that those parcels are in conservation easements. And just kind of the last thing, and I'll bring the map up. If we included undeveloped parcel sizes less than 10 acres, the number of parcels in that category was around 2,800. So it was around 4,200 parcels in total, but we really kind of pulled out the below 10-acre parcels just because the map got really busy. And I think just from a development standpoint, 10 acres and below, we're not going to see a whole lot from that standpoint. But again, this is just kind of showing you the map, again, that you have in front of you, just showing you some of the undeveloped parcels. And again, I think some of the board wanted to see this. I think when we were discussing as part of the work plan, I think it was a little bit about economic development. I think there's a little bit about housing, and I think a little bit maybe around solar too. I think some of this discussion came up. So I just wanted to kind of close the loop on this and provide it to the board in a public setting, since this was on your work plan. Like I said, staff would be happy to answer any questions or any specifics you have on the map. And I want to thank Mr. Trey Walton in the planning department for putting this together. He's been working on a couple good maps for us.
So y'all remember, I was asking Eric yesterday and I couldn't fully remember who suggested we did this. Was it you, Tony? Probably.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we need to add is we need a definition of what a stream actually is.
So one thing, so we are also working on a map right now. Mr. Trey Walton in planning department is working on a map. So we're working on a map for basically now that the board approved all of the solar setbacks, we've actually have a map that's kind of in a draft form that shows all the setbacks from like roads, perennial streams, things of that nature. One thing that we ran into as we were looking at the map, so if you remember, Gary Wood from CVEC provided a map showing perennial streams. As the planning department was putting together a mapping too, so Gary Wood's map was pulled from a Department of Conservation and Recreation. The planning department pulled a map from USGS. Perennial streams don't necessarily match up. So we were going to show something to the board. We planned to show that also kind of in conjunction with this, but after we saw some of the discrepancies, the folks in the planning department are kind of going back and trying to get some authority on what is the baseline for perennial streams. Because it was, if you remember the map that was provided from Mr. Wood, it showed a lot of perennial streams, and I think some of the context to that is maybe there are some some of those streams that are identified from DCR as perennial are really actually intermittent. So we've been working with, Trey Walton, Jason Overstreet, and then Roger Black, kind of looking at these maps and trying to just determine what is actually a perennial stream, because certainly moving forward, if we have any projects, we want to say this is the base map that we're using, and so there's no ambiguity. Is it the DCR map? Is it the USGS map? So we want to have whatever our map is, and this is what perennial streams are. And I think, are they trying to get some, you want to come up, Mr. Fortune, are they trying to get some determination from USGS?
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're still looking into that. And like he said, unfortunately, we don't have that ready right now. We're still trying to get a determination.
So yeah,
I
so
also
we'll,
noticed after looking back at the meeting, all those were the same size. Every stream showed on that map was the same width. So we really had a lot of James Rivers in Fluvanna County. You know, they weren't, it didn't reflect whether this was this little trickle or whatever.
yeah, and that map, I don't know if the perennial streams, I don't know if it actually signifies how big or wide the streams are. I think it's just showing this is approximately where something is, but
In the context I mean that in is,
you could have a
when
wide
it was
stream.
brought up, look how much territory is taken up from these streams. It wasn't that much territory taken up from those streams. If you shrunk them down to the actual size they are, one being much larger, one being much smaller, and so on, is a different. It wasn't a visual reflective.
But yeah, so
And-
go on, I'm sorry.
Well, and this is just a point, I'm looking at the map and I'm trying to figure out, if we've got the major roadways put in there. But if we're doing anything at 10 acres or bigger. The white areas, are we saying they're all smaller than 10 acres? Because
We were saying those are smaller than 10 acres or they have houses on them. They're developed parcels.
That was an interesting thing. So
I mean,
if
going
it's
down
300
here,
acres, but it has a house on it, it's not shown.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
oh, I have to see, because that's my point, there's. A lot of big parcels that might only have one house on them. Okay, that was my question, because I'm going, why do we have all these white areas in
Yeah.
Oak Union and Ken Store?
Remember, it was specific to undeveloped parcels. So if you do have a house on it, that's considered developed, even if it's a house on 300 acres. I mean, so if the board wants to see something different, like I said, we extracted kind of specifically what was discussed and kind of what was adopted in the work plan.
So now that you've gone this far,
Mhm.
would it be just another couple clicks to do, I had the same question, Mike,
Yeah,
to do the ones that have, to add the ones that have a house on them? In other words, if there's a
A single
400,
family.
if there's a 400 acre piece
Mhm.
that has 1,200 square foot house on it, whatever the goal was of whoever asked this, to say that 1,200 square foot house doesn't make that relevant to the request, really isn't correct.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, so to answer your question, you could certainly do that. I think what we would need to do is, if we wanted to include larger properties that maybe had a house on it, I mean, I think the map's gonna get really, really busy if we do that. So maybe what we would want to do, and again, I'm just throwing out a number. I don't know if maybe you want to say, maybe we only want to see, or maybe not, maybe you only want to see acreage of 50 acres or more. Because on this one, again, we're showing 10 to 49.
I agree.
And then maybe if you want to see acreage of that caliber, and if it has houses on it as well, I think we could probably do that.
Yeah.
Not to want to be funny, but what's the purpose of this exercise?
That's
If
what
you,
I asked it.
because
That's
if
why I'm
you-
asking who asked.
if
for it.
we're looking for economic development, you not only have to have a parcel that's developable, but you have to have a business that's willing to go there. So there's two pieces. So are we getting the cart in front of the horse here and creating busy work for a department that should be working on a comprehensive plan or something else? If there's a purpose for what we're doing, and it's not like we got people knocking the door down, hey, I want to build, but you guys don't know where you have no space. Jennifer has stuff that Brian Rothermill created. Parcels that are ready, you can come in, they're available. So unless we have a purpose to ask these guys to be doing work, is this really the time we should be doing this?
And that's why I asked, couldn't remember who asked for it.
Well, I think I asked for it. think there's two purposes for it. One was, to give us a sense as to if and where, and this was, I believe I asked for this prior to the solar ordinance being passed, so that's part of it. But now that we're also considering cluster subdivisions, I think it's also relevant to kind of understand what that might mean as well too. I already had a phone call from a constituent talking about the removal of cluster subdivisions and their concerns about that. So, if you're looking at this and you're trying to understand what is the potential partitioning or growth or so on, I think that's instructive to have that for, not just now, but later on purposes. I wouldn't necessarily make it a high priority. I think this gives us a pretty good idea. 8 lots of 500 to 1,000 acres sense from that standpoint of what they might do. Based on the setbacks that we put in place, basically, you can just look at anything above the 50 acres. I don't think you're going to see any developments on less than that, based on the setbacks that we have. So, that gives us a sense for that. And then, when we look at the cluster subdevelopments, depending on what we want to do with that, we'll have a sense as to, how that might play out. I believe the current by right subdivision is 10 acres. But you can partition your land into 10 acres, is that correct?
You mean under A1?
Yeah.
Just so. I guess it depends on the subdivision. So if you're talking about a rural cluster, or you're talking about just conventional.
In general.
So in A1, you can actually have a lot size as small as 2 acres.
Okay,
So you could, in theory, have a subdivision right now, at least. We're actually addressing that soon. You do a conventional minor subdivision of up to 5 lots, and they could be 2 acres each.
yeah, up to 5 lots on that, but I'm saying that from an administrative purpose, if you want to partition out 10 acres of your land, I thought that could just be done basically by saying, if I own 100 acres, my understanding is that if I'm not doing development, it's still partition off 10 acres without having to go through that process. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, that sounds about right, yeah.
Okay.
And this isn't meant to be funny, just curious, because you said you had and of course, we all get, every citizen gets to have an opinion on everything we do. But you said you had a constituent, they contact you about it. Do you have any properties in your district that this applies to?
Doesn't matter. I mean, I serve all.
No, I said every citizen
Yeah,
gets a
yeah,
chance to have an
right.
opinion. I mean, is it?
No, I don't.
Okay.
You're thinking about doing the golf course.
I don't have it. That's okay.
Tony, did this accomplish what you wanted it to?
I mean, I just mentioned, what I thought would be the benefit of looking at the larger partitions with the houses on it. I just said it doesn't have to be a high priority right now. This gives us a good sense. But ultimately, I'd say that would be helpful. And then the only other question I'd have here is, did we include ag forestal districts and rural preservation as part of this?
I think we're just including conservation easements.
What's the logic behind that?
I forget what the logic was behind that. I think it was, well, the easements, I guess, just to show that's a good question. I mean, I know the easements restrict development.
Would solar be allowed in conservation easement?
I wouldn't think
Oh,
so.
that's why you had.
If I remember, I think because conservation easements were more permanent, whereas some of the other uses, you could change those
You
uses.
can pull your land out of the.
Correct. Yeah.
It's very difficult to take it from conservation.
Conservation easement, you'll have certain development rights, like
Yeah.
Camp Friendship has 3 houses that can be built,
That's right.
so it's permanent.
So I think that was the purpose for just using conservation easements.
All right, so what are we saying? Take the yellow out and
Take out 10 to
add back the single family.
and any properties that are 50 acres above with houses. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. There's no sense in you whittling out whether it's 1 house or 2 houses.
Why would you take the yellow out?
I mean, it's just,
Less than 50 acres.
Well,
as he said, it's.
I'm not trying to throw a
We're
bunch.
trying to simplify the map where it's not just this crazy mishmash of colors.
I mean-
We took the yellow out, which are not terribly relevant potentially for the conversation. And to help just to make the map clearer.
Well, with the amount of setbacks, you're not gonna be able to put.
Well, there's solar.
100 feet, 200 feet.
Solar and then there's conservation. cluster subdivisions. Those are
But
the
a
two that would-
cluster subdivision on a 50-acre parcel would only yield 12 acres of housing. Because the other remainder would have to be in the non-developed
space.
But
area.
it could be
Yeah, it could
24
be
houses.
24 houses.
Right.
Minus infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer your question, I think the reason we would want to get rid of the 10, I think because I'm assuming this is what you'd want to see 50 to 1,000 undeveloped, maybe you'd want to, I'm sorry, 500 to 1,000 undeveloped, maybe you'd want to see 500 to 1,000 developed, and then so on and so forth down in the different categories. And again, without the map just getting crazy busy with too much color and a lot happening there. I mean, we could do it.
I hate to say it this way, but no one will fill a Monkey Ridge. Like one of the yellows is my property in Dixie. But I have another property right beside it it's 50 acres total. One's a 41 acre lot and the other one's a 9 acre lot. I mean, it's the same place, but that's 50 acres.
Common ownership is what you're saying.
Yeah, common ownership, there you go.
Well, that would be interesting.
But that would be a pain in the butt. I don't know about doing that right now.
So I hear it's not a high priority to get this going, but so what does kind of the board want to settle on?
If we're, again, something we're trying to figure out why we decided to do it. But we've gotten this far, my suggestion is get rid of the yellow. It's not terribly representative of where there could be development. You can find exceptions, but 30,000 foot, get rid of the yellow and include properties.
Developed in each of those categories?
Don't agree?
Not really, but
I mean, I'm not trying to talk monkey wrench, but we have a member that used to sit on here that has a lot of land that's divided into 10 acre lots.
Well, I know quite a few of them.
A lot of people are like that,
Yeah.
and there are no houses there, but it's divided into 10 acre lots. Might be 400 acres.
The point is trying to make.
we have this
make
map, we
something
can have a
that's
second
legible
map,
to-
right? It's not a problem.
I mean, we could add the developed ones in the 10 to 49. I mean, it's
No,
Just-
I mean, I'm not worried.
It's gonna really be.
it's gonna be a lot, yeah, I mean, it will. But I mean, we can do it.
I'll vote for whatever you like.
I say keep the 10 acres. Let's see what it looks like.
Okay.
I mean, give us two maps. It's a click of a button once they've done it, so. It's gonna take just as much effort to do the other one as the other.
Yep, we can do it.
I second.
Well, you hold me that, I don't know if you can second. I will.
We don't need a motion.
We don't need no formal motion.
All right. Item C, employee survey update.
Yeah, just a follow up to the board's discussion we had, I think it was a couple meetings ago, about one, we did an employee survey previously, and there was a discussion of doing another one and what are some of the different platforms. There was some discussion is since we did it more in-house and more kind of through a free Google survey platform, is there concern about it being as anonymous? So one, just talking about benefits of an external survey. One, anonymity for respondents provides a level of separation from county administration, expert validation, more robust reporting, some context. It's benchmarked against it could be a benchmark against national trends and standards, reduce staff time, and then certainly increase staff engagement. Those that are filling the survey could provide for a higher response rate. So we've come through, and I want to thank Ms. Harris. She did a lot of the legwork on this for me, is trying to go through and find a lot of the companies that do this. So one is a company called Polko. One, they're a government employee specific survey company. They're also partnered with ICMA. So they have AI generated survey questions. And so there's the National Research Center at Polko, so there's expert validation. The cost to do that would be $6,500 a year, and there's savings for multi-year contracts. Quantum Workplace is one, again, another robust platform. Again, AI generated survey questions. Again, they're not specific to government employees or governments per se. The cost to do that one would be $16,000 to $20,000 a year, depending on which kind of some of the different bells and whistles you want. And there's savings for multi-year contracts. Another one is a company called Culturam. Again, another robust survey dashboard, AI generated questions, not specific to governments. And that's a little over $11,000 a year. There's another one called Block Survey, and this is the one that the sheriff's office utilized not too long ago. Again, AI generated survey questions. With this one, data would be collected and analyzed by staff. With this one, it's $40 per month, and it's billed annually. And I think you can terminate. I think you could terminate after 1 month is what I'm getting from Captain Hurd. And then Survey Monkey, again, kind of similar to Block Survey. Again, AI generated $39 a month. Again, data collected and analyzed by staff. And then certainly the one that we've used for the past, I don't know, the past probably 6 to 8 surveys going back to about 2011. We use a Google survey. Again, that was county staff generated questions. Again, the questions that were used for all those surveys have been basically the exact same questions for the standard questions, with the exception of some of the, kind of optional questions. There was a few optional questions at the end that those kind of change depending on what is kind of the it thing right now to kind of bring the staff as part of that. Again, there's no charge for that with the exception of staff time. And again, it's a little more labor intensive, but staff data is collected and analyzed by county staff. We're waiting to hear back on one other platform called Qualtrics. If you remember Dr. Kelly, who is here, who kind of does surveys and stuff like that, I reached out to him, just kind of getting his input to see if he had any familiarity with any of these. He's actually worked with Qualtrics before, so he said that was a good platform. I don't have a cost on that one yet. We're still waiting to get a response, but we got it from all the others. So again, no formal action again, but I know there were some discussions from the board of, how do you do it where it kind of comes out of, staff's hands and makes it, I guess, more anonymous for those that are taking the survey. So happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Can we go back a couple slides? So sounds like some of these are platforms for us to generate, and then such as like Survey Monkey, for us to generate our own things and then spit the results back to us, which is probably very similar to the Google one. Which one of these are like third-party companies where you would be contracting and someone would come in and actually develop the survey for you and then interpret it for you and help you?
So like Polko, this one up here, Polko, Quantum Workplace. Again, you can see from the prices on these, they're a lot more expensive. So they're kind of doing a lot of the work. Quantum, and then Culturam, those are the ones that are, basically our hands are out of it. So I guess if there's a concern that, are people less likely to do it because they think that we have a hand in looking at the survey results and knowing who it is, and maybe people aren't responding because of that. Those first 3, the 2 on the previous page and this Culturam would be more specific to what you're talking about, Mr. Goad. And then Block Survey, Survey Monkey, and then the Google one. Again, different forms of those, but those we would have some input and have some analyzation of the data. And obviously from the price standpoint, it's cheaper because there's no one else doing the work besides the county.
And I just want to clarify that I think it also, I don't want this to seem like a negative thing on staff. I think this also protects you all to do it this way too, and just kind of have this completely out. And whether someone thinks it's anonymous or this was, done this way or that way, I think this is a very, there's no way to say that this isn't completely objective if we were to go to someone third party, and that no one can point the finger at anybody when it comes back to anything. I'm not saying that's going on. I just think it's the safest practice and safest way to do it. So what is, it sounds like Ms. Harris, you were doing a lot of what is the difference? So it sounds like you have a high end, which would be the Quantum Workplace, a medium end, which would be the Culturam, and then a low end, which would be the Polko. What's the difference in those? And why the price difference?
So I did demos with all 3 of those. Quantum probably had the splashiest, all the bells and whistles. They do pulse surveys as many times a year as we'd like. They do the more comprehensive surveys 3 to 4 times a year. I mean, it was just a very robust platform, and then the services that we would get back from them. Polko, you know, the advantage to Polko is that they are specific to government employees, have best price. They have, so the National Research Center was its own thing. Polko and National Research Center merged, and I don't remember what year that was. So they get all of this in-house expert validation that's just there. But one of the things that I didn't bullet point on there, the 3 Culture and Quantum and Polko that they do, is they not only provide us with the results, they're completely anonymized results. So there's no way that we'd be able to match it up with the employees. But then they also take that a little bit further and provide reports for, you know, what are your hot spots? Where are the areas that, you know, they do that work, so that we don't have to do that interpretation. They provide, you know, retention strategies or recruitment strategies. I can't remember now which one it was, and it probably was Culture Amp because they were really splashy. They do like a comprehensive, here's why your employees are leaving you, here's why your employees are staying, and we want to help you build a complete program around retention and development of employees as well. But Polko had a little bit more streamlined dashboard, but everything that we would want to know, we could get through that one. And I'm a tiny bit biased to Polko because they're government focused. But the other 2, I mean, they would be able to do exactly this and then some to get these, to get the surveys out. They all really focused on the anonymity and how hard they work to keep that completely anonymous. And like you said, to have that separation between the survey and county administration. So.
And then, for the more robust ones, they allow multiple surveys per year. I mean, like, so for instance,
They all did.
like the sheriff's office, for instance, they did their own. I mean, there's, you know, potential that if they wanted to do a separate one, they could do that. So I think this would allow for multiple surveys.
There are.
Which one would?
They all would.
They all would.
They all would. Yeah, they all. I think Polko didn't do what they called the pulse surveys. And they had a whole methodology around why they only do it certain times or a certain number of times per year.
What's a pulse survey? I mean, I think I
To
get the
the
gym.
pulse of your employees,
Yeah.
to see what's really going on. A 2 or 3 question survey that comes out with much more frequency than the larger. The one thing that I did notice, when Culture Amp showed me their survey template, they had 57 questions on it. That's a lot of questions. Polko had 24. So that was a big difference. But Polko was specifically measuring government employee responses. So it also looked at one of the questions or question areas that they had was, how do you feel government functions in your community? How do you feel living in your community? So it took it outside of just our space of being employees, but how's that working in the community, and really tied the employees to the community. The other 2, Quantum and Culture Amp, might have done that, but they didn't highlight that as one of the areas that they surveyed. So that was a big one for Polko, not just their employees, but how are they doing in the community?
And again, we're still waiting on Qualtrics. Again, if you
I haven't
remember,
heard anything from them.
yeah, Dr. Kelly was really familiar with them, and he's actually used them before. So, you know, it'd be interesting to just see where they come back at when they respond. But again, there was no formal action here today. Just kind of wanted to bring you back the kind of what we found and kind of what some of the options are. I mean, if the board says, we want to go to something that, you know, county administration hands are kind of off of it, well, then we can bring back, these are the ones that we show that would suit that need. But, so
It seems to me, the fact that you say that some are very aware of it being clear that county hand or that administration's hands are off of it. They're very conscious of making it clear. That says that they know that that's important. They're in the,
Very
in
much
the
so.
industry.
Yeah.
Very much so. I mean, they all reiterated that over and over, and they feel that they have the higher response rate because they make it so clear that this is completely anonymous. None of the raw data is given to us, so it's all put through whatever, you know, filters they do for the reporting. It is completely anonymous, and the survey that we've done in-house is anonymous. But we are a small group of people and you can tell this even when you're just reading it on paper. So it is,
And even if
there's
you couldn't-
definitely,
Even if you couldn't, perception,
absolutely,
you know, is,
Yeah.
that's not reality.
absolutely.
So with like Polko or there, I guess with the lower cost, there might be lower services, obviously. Does that provide for qualitative feedback and interpretation of that quality? So open-ended responses as well. You mentioned 24 questions, so some of those are open-ended.
Yes, so they do create the questions for us, but we have some input on relevance of the question. So they might show us 24 questions, but we'll get to go over and then, well, that one doesn't make any sense for us, or we need to get something that captures a little bit more of that. They will work with us on that. But they do provide the template. They provide the questions, and then they do everything else. So the way that all three of the demos that I did mostly worked like this, but the way Polko described it is they take a 12-week process. The first 4 weeks are working with county staff to refine the survey itself, the instrument itself. The second 4 weeks is to push it out to staff. They'll send 3 emails. One to here it is, here is the survey. Whoever responds to the first appeal doesn't get the second appeal. Second appeal goes out, same thing, up to 3. All 3 that I talked to have very good they say they have very good response rates, so about 85%, 75, 85%. That seems really good. But yeah, we are hands off after that first, whatever that period of time is of working with them to fine tune it for our needs rather than just an industry standard.
What was the response rate on the one we most recently did? Do you have any idea?
Don't remember.
It was maybe 50%. Would you say?
It's always historically been pretty low. I remember looking at them when I did them. And I
57
mean,
number.
you guys
That
probably
seems
didn't hear
right.
the stuff.
Yeah, I
that
was
would hear.
just thinking 50. So I was just thinking in my head, but because I was going back and looking at some stuff, how many responses we received versus roughly how many employees we had. I want to say it's roughly the last one's 50%, I think.
I think we had 87 or 91 responses, and I don't remember how many employees we had. We
Yeah.
have a lot more employees now than we did
Yes.
at the time of that one, so.
Couple things. One, as far as the pulse goes, I don't think you want to ask the question but so many times. I mean, go home and ask your family every day, are they happy? Then they can always be happy.
Next time they're not happy.
So if, and this would be off the cuff response, but say a mid-level employee in Fluvanna, if you lost them, what's the cost to replace?
I mean, I just think the biggest piece is the one currently, it's a lot tougher to get qualified candidates to fill the spot. So really what you're doing is you got someone else trying to do the work for you. So from a cost standpoint, I don't think it maybe cost you more once you get the new employee because you're having to take away from doing other things to retrain the employee or kind of train the employee to the process. So I think what you're doing, you're taking away from doing other stuff is really what it is. And then just, I think from the employees that are having to, chip in, there's a little extra burn there. Just, I don't want to say burnout, but I mean, just sometimes participating and helping to do more than really what you normally do, that puts a little extra burden on the staff. So
There's multiple pieces to that cost piece. So you got to consider when you lose a staff member, you've got the lost time, and then somebody has to train them. So the person's untrained and not performing, and somebody else is losing time because they're having to train them. In addition to that, if the staff has to create the survey, they have to create the survey, distribute it, manage it, sift the data. And Kelly's time in a month is more than $6,500. So I think by outsourcing it, it's a net win all the way around. And like Mr. Goad said, it provides a certain level of separation. And I can tell you, the bulk of the staff didn't answer. The low response rate was down to 2 things. People thinking that it wasn't anonymous. And when I read some of the results, I'd be like, I know who that is, and I know who said that. And the other half was you have to remember, if these guys can make it easier to where people can do it from their mobile device, your grounds and your facilities people don't sit at a desk and have a computer. So it has to be mobile friendly for them people to respond.
No, I think, couldn't we do the other one mobile?
You should be able to do a Google one.
I thought we
We
could.
could do that one.
It did, but it didn't size really well on the phone, and
Yeah,
particularly
maybe, yeah.
when they've got the smaller
Yeah.
phone, they couldn't see it. And it's
Yeah.
like when they do their timesheets, they run
Yeah.
into problems with
Yeah.
that.
So then my question was, so if you had $6,500 and saved 2 employees. And it was something under $2,500 per employee, the burden to.
Yeah.
Then you've really saved your money and gotten a better system to analyze it. Thank you. You know, I almost asked you.
Thank you, Don.
That 1/3 of their yearly. Really? Wow.
What's-
I don't understand the relevance to that.
Can you come up? Sorry.
But the relevance is, if it's $6,500, how many employees do you have to save just to break even? Not much.
What do you mean save?
Before you achieve a cost benefit
Oh,
analysis.
I see what
Instead
you're
of having to if you had to go
saying. The
through,
assumption being you're losing the employee because they're dissatisfied.
that's what I'm saying, if you lost 2 employees, that is saved, and I don't, who knows, I don't know if that would do that.
I see.
And I don't think anyone on the county payroll makes 19.5. So you would say if you save one person.
So which one gave retention strategies?
They all did.
They all
They
did.
all did. Yeah, they,
Okay.
the quantum and culture amp are not specific to government employees, so we would have more fine tuning to do with them to get it very specific. Polko was specific to government employees, federal, state, and local. So they've already got that sort of in their wheelhouse to be able to do that.
And you know, one thing I checked, maybe, I haven't even looked at this. I wonder if there's any vendors at Vaco that do this too. So maybe,
Polko might be there.
yeah.
Say we should wait for Qualtrics and then, given that Dr. Kelly's a data scientist specializing in this, probably hear his recommendations. Value. Ultimately, I don't think I think there's consensus to move forward with something, so.
So what we can do is once we hear from this last one, and because I was gonna try and meet with him and just kind of get his impression of it. Like I said, he looked at some, I sent him some links on it and stuff just to see if he had any thoughts. Again, he was familiar with Qualtrics, but that was the only one that we had not had a chance to get any information on at this point. We just haven't heard back from him, so.
Ms. Snow, in the HR world, are you familiar with any of these? Quantum? What would you care to give any feedback on?
I've just used it in healthcare.
Okay, and what were your thoughts on it?
Great feedback.
Is that a recommendation to look further into that?
Awesome.
Okay,
Always loved it. It was great to work with.
Have you had a chance to compare it to the others?
I have not.
Okay.
I would appreciate if you had the time and want to look into it when we come back to this, if you looked into those other two.
Yeah,
And maybe Qualtrics, and if you,
Well,
Yeah.
government prior to Fluvanna, it's the first time I've worked with government.
I'd be interested if you were to look at those and compare to what you know.
Yeah.
What your feedback would be, because I mean, if it's 1/3 of an employee salary and you're looking at, again. You obviously, your eyes wander to the cheaper option if they all do the same thing, but clearly there's a reason one's more expensive than the other and. Some feedback. Well,
I was like, yeah, I just found out about it today. So. Yeah. But that's here, but yeah, it's been a while because I've been here about 4 years now.
thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll bring something back after we hear from Qualtrics, and then after we have a little bit more chance to really kind of do a deeper dive into it, but just wanted to get the information back to the board since it was requested.
All right, moving on to action matters. Item B, 2025 TJPDC legislative program. Mr. Davis.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Before I get into the legislative program, I want to take just a minute, if I could, to publicly thank some members of your staff who spent an afternoon in early October with the TJPDC staff, Mr. Dahl, Ms. Harris, Ms. Schmack, and Mr. Fortune. Joined the TJPDC on I guess it was a 3-hour tour, right? Yeah, a 3-hour bus tour around Fluvanna County. And at TJPDC, we wanted to take advantage of an opportunity that we saw to get our staff out into the member jurisdictions, to become more familiar with them, to learn about them, to interact with folks in the county government. Because as we're, working on programs and projects on your behalf and with you, we need to know as much as we can. So I think it was a really good afternoon. We made several stops, at points of interest. But I think there was a lot of value to just the discussion on the bus that we had, the questions and the answers that were given. But really appreciate not only the opportunity to get to know Fluvanna better, to experience Fluvanna, to see some things that are important to you, to hear about things that are important to you. But again, I just wanted to thank the staff for giving up a Friday afternoon to be with us.
I will ask this, was the staff the tour guides, or did y'all have somebody that grew up here?
They were the tour guide.
Okay. Yeah. Next time, ask somebody that also been here for
Anybody in mind?
right there. No, Overton McGee is good. I was gonna say, I'm sure it was great, but Overton McGee.
Yep,
another
I
one.
know.
Yeah, we weren't doing it from a history lesson, that's for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I certainly appreciate that feedback. We went to Louisa County that Friday morning, came to Fluvanna, and then we're gonna hit.
I'm glad y'all were doing it. Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, we appreciate
Just to be
feedback.
clear, which is better.
Yeah, both are great. We love all our counties and our city. All right, on to the matters at hand. You have before you the draft 2025 regional legislative program for your approval. There was a memo included in the packet that speaks to the 3 priority items for the 2025 session. They're actually a continuation of the ones from this past year. First one, public education funding. Really state support for K-12 funding continues to be a top issue in the region. Of course, that resonates even louder, I think, with the JLARC K-12 study from last year. Made some amendments in there just to try to recognize the work that was done to start to eat into some of that, some of those recommendations this past year, and knowing that more will be forthcoming. Second priority relates to budgets and funding. This is a perennial position that's been in the program for a number of years, and it's really kind of an all-encompassing. We support enhanced state funding for those state programs that you are carrying out locally. We don't want you to send down unfunded or underfunded mandates, and we want to preserve the revenue generating authority at the local level that we have. So no changes to that program from what it was last year. And then the final priority is land use and growth management. When I stood here before you this time last year, I talked about what we were anticipating was going to be a very active year in that realm. And as you know, we had a lot thrown at us in the 2024 session. I'm anticipating that we're going to rinse and repeat and see some more of that this coming session as well. I did want to point out there's a couple of new statements, particularly in that section, that I wanted to point out to you. And I'm going to read the first one because you've spent a lot of time this past year talking about this topic. We support local authority to address siting and other impacts associated with utility scale installation of clean energy resources. We support state funding and technical assistance that address the planning, production, transmission, and deployment of new resources. The second position that is new to that priority this year speaks to accessory dwelling units, was kind of a hot topic during the 2024 session as well, and a statement that's been added that local government should retain the authority to regulate ADUs. That's a brief summary of the priorities. The other part of the program is the legislative positions section that really focuses on recommendations and position statements in other areas that are outside of those three priority areas, but items that are of current interest or concern to local governments in the region. And I put a summary in your packet. There's like maybe 6 or 7 language changes that I thought were fairly significant that I wanted to point out to you. So, with that, I'm glad to take any questions you may have, if there's any additional suggestions that you may have for the program. And again, I'm asking for approval of it this evening.
I like what you've done with this. And under the CSA section, I know several things, but the one thing that wasn't addressed is there's a category called protected funding. And the rates at which we have protected funding haven't been updated in a long time. And in this locality, we tend to burn through the protected funding pretty quick. And there's other localities, whether there's not a need or they're not aware of it, they're not using it. If there's some way that they could either adjust that for inflation, same thing in the other areas, the cost shares under the CSA program. Or if when a locality burns through the protected funding, it basically comes down to CPMT to determine whether the individual has services stopped or the locality has to pick up the remainder of the cost for the year. And then how do you address any new cases that come along if you're already run through your protected funding? And if there's localities, if the state's allocating it to the localities and there's some that aren't using it, why can't that money be used in a locality with greater need?
Is this the pool funds that then, once you exhaust those, you have to go back and request reimbursement
Yes.
for additional?
Yeah. And I didn't see that addressed
Yeah,
there.
I can work that in, and that may have been, I know we've had some things in the past about the pool funding, but I can work something.
A lot of the localities in our region tend to burn through their protected funding really quick. But there's other ones on south side and southwest and the western part of the state that don't use it at all. Maybe the need's not there. For some reason, the need in this region seems to be greater. And I think your other CPMTs and the other localities will tell you the same thing.
And is some of that driven by if you get a very specialized case, high intensity services that you're going to burn through that funding quicker? That may be having to do with the population too. And I can touch base with Mr. Moeller on that as well.
Yeah, I'm new to it this year. This is my first year on CPMT and we experienced it. And the question I asked was, is this a perennial problem? And what's being done to address this? And that's how the discussion went into, well, we get this set amount and it's been that set amount for a long time and nobody's looked at it. And the cost of services go up. You'd think that the allocation from the state would go up. And it's not like the state's running a zero budget game. When they have a surplus, they need to look at the schools and the other things that you mentioned in the plan. And we need to adjust those accordingly. But
yeah, they're good about holding a line item the same. I know the administrative funding for CSA was just level funded for years and years and years. And it was based on, the amount that was 1997 or something. So here we are in 2010, trying to get that updated. So yeah, so with the concurrence of the board, we can certainly add something in back on that.
An item that I think might be worth exploring and bringing up to the legislature is given the income administration's desire to get rid of the Department of Education. And that it's about 12% of our school funding budget.
Federal funding.
Federal funding. Were that to change, that the state legislature would pick up the tab as opposed to passing it on to the localities. 12% would be a hefty tax increase for our citizens. We would have to put in place if that funding is revoked.
Thank you.
Well, wouldn't it be though also true that if the department went away, but the cost of the department wouldn't be just the services, right? But the department in itself would have a notable cost that would go away.
I don't know the answer to that, but if the funding goes away, given the propensity by state legislatures to pass it to localities, that could be a very significant tax increase for our citizens. So, I mean, I don't know the answer.
Whatever percentage it is, but some level of the hierarchy, the cost related to that would go away.
Yeah. Whether they pass it on to us or not, I have no idea.
Probably the biggest, I guess is the biggest amount of funding from the federal government is for IDEA, special education. So, you'd have to get rid of that,
Yeah.
50-year-old mandate to.
May not even be an issue, but it's just something that if it does come up. And funding is gonna be eliminated by that's that's certainly.
Sure, your local governments, your school boards.
Governments. Again. We often say, they like to pass it right down to us, so.
Billy Kiger said it best, don't have a surplus until all your bills are paid. And they're very good at not paying their bills and say they have a surplus. And that's what the JLARC study has said to the nth degree, that they're not paying their fair share.
It's good to have them confirming what local
And
government.
that's
is saying
their
for a
study,
long
not
time,
our study
right?
that did it.
And I'll add, thank you to the fact that you all are fighting to keep our local rights, specifically when it came to solar this year and your help in understanding what was happening there and how to do it was well appreciated.
Appreciate you spending time in Richmond with me.
See you this weekend
Yes,
at the
indeed.
education.
Yes, indeed.
All
Look
that.
forward to it.
Notable. They told me not every planning district commission shows up to make it. And so I commend them for doing so. Anything
A lot of
else?
fun to have around.
Anything else? Anything from you?
No, just,
A
approve
motion.
the program as amended. If,
I move the Board of Supervisors approve the 2025 Thomas Jefferson Planning District Legislative Program as presented.
And amended.
Did I hear something?
and with the,
Did you say and amended?
with, the incorporation of an amendment as was discussed. We'll come up with some language.
Motion made by Mr. Sheridan, seconded by Mr. O'Brien, all in favor? Chair votes aye, 5-0.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Item E, job description updates and reclassifications for the treasurer's office. Ms. Enhouse.
Evening. I'm here for job description updates, and promotions for some of the ladies that we have existing now. I know you all have read your packets. I was just wondering if there was anything in particular that you wanted me to go through, or just wanted me to go through the entire thing.
I didn't have particular items, and you don't necessarily need to go verbatim do it from me. But, some bullet points that you thought were especially important.
Well, I did just want to stress, we did have a vacancy that came about. And so we have decided we did an in-house upgrade for that person, to move into that position. One of the things that I'm trying to do there is to cross-train. As the example of the person that left dealt with the mortgages, escrows, and that sort of thing for the real estate. There were aspects of it that I had already pushed that there was some cross-training on. But once she left, it was a scramble there. So we're trying to make sure that, everyone is cross-trained on these different types of things. I took the job descriptions that we had and gave them to each one and said, go through this. Do you do this? What else do you do? And those types of things. So I feel really comfortable with the new job descriptions. And one of the things that we added was the ability to be able to, for example, the mortgages. So that lady that was the position 2 has moved into that 3 position. Then we had a 3 that's going to move into the 4 position. The reason I've got her moving into the 4 position is I've got her cross-training with the current chief deputy. And I'll just be honest, everybody knows Lori. Lori is pretty much the treasurer's office. I'll just tell you, she has been running that thing solely for a long time. And I just thought that it would be good for her to have some help in these jobs that she has taken on and seems to be at a dead run from dusk to dawn on those, but she's there she's there before I'm there in the morning and she works diligently and sometimes even comes in on her days off. The other one is taking her position and moving her to a chief deputy too, which I feel like is long overdue. And then we have one other one I'm gonna leave as the two position because she hasn't been there quite 2 years. But to give her, to make sure that she gets a raise. We will be hiring one other person as soon as these job descriptions are approved, if that's what you do this evening. We're going to turn it over to her and let her advertise for that position. And that's some of the reasoning that I have here, as far as the fiscal impact, moving that 2 to the 3, she would still be less than what the 3 was when she left. So really not that much. The 3 to a 4 is just an increase to the county of about $5,400. Moving the chief deputy from the 1 to the 2 position is only about $3,500 fiscal impact for the county. And the other raise is about $4,200. So that's the reasoning behind that. And I do apologize for not really, for being in the melee that was back at budget time. But I was in the middle of my first billing cycle. And I just didn't feel like I should take the time out to work on job descriptions when I had a job to do and to learn, because I am still learning. So that's why I'm coming to you now. And if there's any questions for me or from Ms. Snow, that'd be great.
So what is I noticed, I guess part of it was what you provided, Ms. Rittenhouse. So it looked like we're talking $1,000 here. It's not a huge deal. I'm just trying to hammer down what exact amount is. Looked like you provided some figures that came out to 12,206. And then in the front of the packet, it was some figures that came out to 13,023.19. So what was the actual number there?
I mean, the total number looks like it's just looking at the 3. I mean, there's not including there's going to be some decreases, but just on the 3 that are just straight up increases, a little over 13,076 is what I'm showing.
Quick question. I know when we've listened to Ms. Treadway and Mr. Sheridan talking about trying to get master certifications. Are your guys trying to work?
Most definitely. That was something that they were not
I
allowed.
was making sure they were doing that.
They were not allowed to pursue that before, and they are gung ho and in that.
Good to hear. Good to hear. I just
Thank
wanted to
you,
make sure
Chris.
we were.
Thank you for bringing that up,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
I was going to say something, but I forgot.
What's
Yes,
the
ma'am.
time frame for completion of
It's a multi-year thing.
It varies there. I mean, it's at least 2 years, because I've got to have 2 clean audits under my belt first. And they're in line with that. It's going to take a little while for that.
So that increase will be way down the road.
Yes.
But
Yes, sir.
this is one that we talked about, or I brought up when we did what we did the last budget season. This is the third shoot of fire.
I would just like to thank your staff for stepping forward and getting the training, for everything they've done to get the tax bills out. And I know there was a lot of changes, and I've received a lot of feedback that people are appreciative for what they do and for being able to pay with cards. And that's been a long project from before I even worked for the county 7 years ago. So having that capability is now going to open up where we can have citizen self-service and 100 other things. So everything you've done from the day you took office, I'd just like to say thanks and pass thanks on to the girls in the office. People appreciate it.
There's a motion.
I have also gotten good feedback, by the way, as we discussed.
I would imagine that's not from those that are delinquent though.
Yeah, they might not have been in the paper. There's,
Just one thing to note too, these are what Ms. Rittenhouse put forward. These would be retroactive back to the beginning of the fiscal, just
That
for
puts
full
me
disclosure.
in with the, I'm the rookie on the block, so I'm just playing catch up. But if it was retroactive, then I could come to you at the budget time like it should be.
And that was a concerning item for me, and, you know, all this started with, as we all know, with Trissy doing what she did. And for whatever reason that, and some of it rightfully so, that people didn't do it at the time that she did and so on. You know, she came to us during budgets. And we made a decision with time to do so. And plenty of conversation around it, what we're gonna do with her piece. The commissioner's piece came in at the end as a result of that. And it was very reactionary, yet they still both made it, you know, and at the end. In the case of the commissioners, the retroactive, I think we said right before right before the new year started, that we deferred it in order to get a little more information, like a couple week lag there, that we said if we came back, if we voted for it, we have to come back around to it. And which of course is very different than where we were at now, going back to the beginning of July. I'm not saying I'm against it. I just feel like there's more of this I want to, and haven't had a chance in the couple days with the election being yesterday and so on to dig as much into this as I'd like to. So I'd like to, personally, I'd like to defer and have another, at least until the next meeting, to look more into this, ask more questions, do some comparisons and so on, but I just honestly haven't had a chance.
So is your concern more with filling gaps or with the retroactive nature of it?
I wouldn't say there's a concern with either. I do have a concern with the retroactive nature. So, yeah, I would say there's a concern there, but there's more I want to know about it.
But on the retroactive, Ms. Rittenhouse could have made the choice to not do the things she's done to improve her office.
Yeah.
And join the other ones and do the job descriptions back then. But she chose to perform the function first. The execution of county government came first, and she should be commended for doing that. And then she's now retroactively trying to go back. So she put the citizens and the tax bills and credit cards and various other things, and the girls' training, because they were started attending training. Miss Rittenhouse started attending training. So she put this off to do other more pressing things, and this is equally important, but
I mean, so I think there's a lot of this.
Motion and then go into discussion.
yeah.
So whatever you say.
Well, I'm gonna say this before you then. There's a lot of decision making that people make along the way. Trissy, and everybody's in a different situation. You know, Trissy was pretty proactive in hers. The commissioner's was reactive, and that had holes in it. The treasurer had stuff that was pressing, and I commend for prioritizing during that. The county administrator didn't do any of this, and he made a decision of when he would bring that to the board during budget season. So it's just all different scenarios. I don't know that because one did something that the others should be compared to.
I'll just repeat what I said in budget season.
That this was.
That we were gonna do this was gonna happen. If we did it for one, we should do it for all three of our offices. That, I said that in the budget time, and I'll stick with that right now.
And that
mean,
was
I-
my understanding also. I mean, I could have just gone ahead and jumped into the melee at budget season. But I was told that there would be consideration for me down the road. As a matter of fact, I was sort of kind of under the impression coming in, well, September and October, I'm a little late, but still.
So does the retroactive nature of this just come out to $13,000?
That's the full year increase, yes.
So it's not,
I gotta say, I don't know that it would have been a positive to have been, it might have gotten less in participating.
If I had jumped in then.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to be in it. I'll be.
No, you didn't.
I was approached to be a part of it and I backed off. I'm just being honest.
I move the Board of Supervisors approve the position upgrade of a full-time deputy treasurer 2 to a full-time deputy treasurer 3 in the treasurer's office and further approve the amended position description.
Second.
All right. No more
We gotta go one by one. I mean, yeah,
discussion?
I was gonna say we gotta go one by one.
Chris, did you have discussion?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't.
Is there discussion?
I thought I saw you.
Oh, no, you had said you wanted discussion.
No.
Did you get everything?
I thought I saw you.
Oh, no.
Right. Right, so I'm sorry, motion made by Mr. Sheridan, second by Mr. Hodge, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0.
I move the Board of Supervisors approve the position upgrade of full-time deputy treasurer 3 to a full-time deputy treasurer 4 in the treasurer's office for FY 25 at a cost of $5,399 for salary and benefits, with funding to come from the FY 25 Board of Supervisors contingency budget, and further approve the amended position description.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sheridan, second by Mr. Hodge, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0.
Anybody else want to do one?
I'll do one. I move the Board of Supervisors approve the position upgrade of a full-time Chief Deputy Treasurer 1 to a full-time Chief Deputy Treasurer 2 in the Treasurer's Office for fiscal year 25 at a cost of $3,462 for salary and benefits, with funding to come from the fiscal year 25 BOS contingency budget, and further approve the amended position description.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hodge, second by Mr. Good, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0. Sorry, wait, what?
I was curious.
Chair votes aye, 5-0.
I move the Board of Supervisors approve the position realignment for the full-time Deputy Treasurer 2 due to compression in the Treasurer's Office for fiscal year 25 at a cost of $4,215, with funding to come from the fiscal year 25 BOS contingency budget, and further approve the amended position description.
Motion made by Mr. Hodge, second by Mr. O'Brien, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0.
Thank you, Ms. Rittenhouse.
Thank you.
very much. Have a good day.
And you're doing a great job.
Pass on the board's appreciation.
All right. Consent agenda. Anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda?
I don't have any.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Goode, second by Mr. Sheridan, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 5-0. All right, we have,
Unfinished.
we don't have any unfinished, do we? New business.
So again, with the elected officials breakfast coming up November 21st, are there any particular just topics or things that the board wants to bring up to the legislators that are going to be there at that time?
Yes, sir. I brought it up last year when we had this. We have 45 days of early voting. The registrar in our county and in neighboring counties will tell you the first week is very busy. And then there's a trickle and there's a cost for 45 days of early voting. If they could look into and poll the registrars to reduce that from 45 to 21, I imagine there's consensus among most of the county registrars. This was passed at the state level. And again, it's an unfunded mandate. We have to fund the staffing and the various things to allow this. And if they went to a shorter period, even if it's 30 days or tried it, at least present it on the House floor and let the delegates and the senators vote on it.
The fiscal impact for us is not just the staff. We're paying however much in rent per year.
Yes.
Because we had to move the office from up here because it didn't have enough rent, enough space, so we had to rent 2 spaces at Lake Monticello. So I mean, it came with a huge price tag for us.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, would we still have to?
I mean, we're stuck there now, but
Yeah.
that's why we left where we were, because we didn't have the parking 45 days, we didn't have the space. So, I mean, that's, how many years ago was that we did that? 2 years?
No, I would say it's
No.
4 years.
It was 2 years
All
before I
right, so
left.
we've been renting that for 5
18.
years at about 45,000, that's a $250,000 price tag, that they've given us that was unfunded, not including
Staff.
and the additional resources we had to purchase to have enough machines. Is correct? We had to buy machines also. I mean,
Yep.
our bill that they handed us in 5 years is well over 300,000. I mean, probably well over 400,000.
So what is it we're saying you want regarding the elected officials?
For
Just
them to
reduce it.
look to the county registrars and see what they say. A majority of them say that it can be shorter because it's busy and then dead for a long period of time. And then the last
It still
week or
has to be
two,
occupied.
and then have more than one Saturday of early voting. It's really hard for people to make the hours, even with early voting. If you work, unless you're allowed to go in the daytime or have a lunch hour, you're close, you're not getting over there in time. And the Saturday voting's only that last Saturday. So if they shorten it to 21 days and included the Saturdays, yes, there's a cost for staff on the Saturdays, but now you've opened it up to the service workers that are working the minimum wage jobs and improve the chances that they don't experience voter disenfranchisement because they can't get to the polls.
And I get it, I'm just trying to get down to what, to the question of what we.
Shorten it, like,
Shorten it.
shorten the period.
Shorten the early voting.
Yeah,
We started at 45 when we were in COVID.
We can still
Yeah.
email you thoughts as well.
Oh, yeah. Certainly.
and then I think certainly the whole SCC solar thing,
Well, J-Lark has to be one of our main topics.
Yes.
We probably need to pull some of the facts and figures just for Fluvanna County. Okay, I haven't looked at it. I'm sure that they sent them all out. But we have to have our J-Lark numbers in front of us to say, okay, guys, we're not trying to point fingers. But every time y'all give a 5% raise, we gave a 5% raise. She gave a third of a 5% raise. Or 40% of a 5% raise, because we have to pay 60%. I think that's about where we are with our composite index or whatever LCI.
And that needs to be looked at more frequently.
Are we below less than or more than Louisa's LCI? Because I cannot believe, I think the last time I looked, I thought ours was
I'm
a higher number, and I can't believe. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Goochland's got the highest one you can have. They are 80, so they're having to pay 80% of whatever raise. But they are very lucky to say, we're giving you a 5% raise. You gave 40% of it. Yep.
so what else?
Yeah, anything else? Is there anything y'all can think of planning? I mean, this probably, anything that comes up, I mean, that's one of the things I found when I went down to Richmond. I had people walk in with specific bills that were just for their little neck of the woods. I mean, I watched the lady come in from Goochland and they had written up a specific bill just for them. Now, I don't know if there's anything we have that pressing.
We're working on with Mr. Witten and myself are working on something with David Blondon, just about. Remember the whole thing about the vouchers for volunteers?
Oh, yeah, for rescue and fire.
Yeah, I mean, because right now, the way that Mr. Witten interprets state code is you can only provide a different tax rate. Not a set amount per se, or a voucher amount.
That would be a good thing to bring up, to put on their radar. How can we, because we still have many counties that have volunteers, how can we, $33 is a lot of money. That's what we get a year, not a month.
So being a Dillon Rural state, we need that specific authority from the state.
Correct.
So we talked to
And that's
Mr.
something that
Valon
they
about
probably
that.
never thought about unless something is brought up to them.
But couldn't we create, I asked Mel this, couldn't you create a vehicle class and then put the firefighters in that vehicle class with a low tax rate?
You can, that's what other counties do. For instance,
Yeah.
Goochland, it's 0.001 cents for all volunteer firefighters. So, but
But
the issue was if someone has a $80,000 truck or $2,000 truck, they're
They're getting a
getting
different
vastly
benefit.
different benefits.
Well,
How's
if
that?
that's what the state's allowed us to do,
Correct. That's
to
we have
not
authority.
do anything is a slap in the face to the volunteers. And I'm sorry that, you know, some people have more expensive cars than others. You know, and by the same token, somebody that's got a 20-year-old car or one with 160,000 miles, they're not paying next to no tax on it anyways. This is why I preferred the voucher, for them to use it how they wanted on
But
taxes.
this would have to be something that they'd have to approve in the legislature.
Yeah, well, creating a vehicle taxation class like the other ones, have Mel create a special class and each one put it in.
But
If we don't do something, you know what's gonna happen? We're gonna have paid staff. And that's gonna cost us
We're
more.
gonna end up there one day.
But, you know, I think for us to, unless I'm missing something, for us to really have that conversation, we need to have that as at a different time. I get what you're
Yeah.
saying, but we're talking about for the elected officials, what we're gonna cover with them. You're saying what we could do without.
Without them.
That's without them.
or
I'm
maybe-
saying,
but
I'm
ask
saying
them.
if they adopt something where we could do a voucher.
That's similar to what Albemarle does. They get a $300 voucher to $150 vouchers, but this
Yep.
would give specific authority to localities to have that voucher.
So is there an absence of the authority in the state code that you perceive or a specific prohibition of the voucher program?
There's this absence of authority. There's no express or implied authority.
Okay.
So
Why
under y'all have-
Something we could ask them to, if one of them would sponsor something of that nature.
Correct.
If we could write something up, that's exactly what I'm talking about, that Goochland came forward with. And they actually laid down something with the writing of, hey, would you consider sponsoring this? And Lee Ware looked at him and said, well, I thought about that, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll sit down and look it over and come up with something.
I would think Mr. Garrett would be the type of person that would look at it and see the
Lee
sense.
was our representative and he just asked me, you want to see how it's done? Come in here and sit down. And I just sat there and watched 5 or 6 different people come in and present in front of them. And I went, whoa. And me just saying, hey buddy, how you doing?
So are we clear what it is we're looking for on that?
Is there anything else we want to look at? Can you think of anything?
I think it's fun.
I mean, if you all think of anything like when you know.
Like I said, if
next-
we have our specific numbers
Yeah.
on J-Lark
And
of where this funding is short, how much have we been shorted over the last, I think 2010, if I'm correct, Mr. Blunt, is when they changed the funding cycle. 2009 or 2010, they cut back and haven't gone back. Yeah, it's 2009 or 2010, and they just started last year trying to get back to where we were then. And the stock market's doing a little bit better now, and they've had a lot of positive, what do they call it? Surpluses. They've had a lot of surpluses since 2014 or whatever.
Is everybody aware it's 8:30 at morning?
Well, I thought you were saying it's 8:30.
I was like, did we set the clocks back the wrong way?
Wait, where are we still? Close session.
And I did check the composite index for Louisa is 0.5, we're at 0.4. So Louisa is higher than this.
Will the elected officials breakfast contain, will it be the people who are currently holding those posts or the people that were elected to those posts?
I think it's both current. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we need to
Yeah.
invite those that are elected.
Yeah, I mean, we did the same thing last
Good
year
Lord,
too. We
knows.
invited both.
Well, McGuire
Those
is
that were,
both.
yeah.
He's in 2 of them right now, current and elected. So if you invite McGuire, you get 2 for 1. Mr. Garrett. Sure. Good.
All right, anything else on that?
I
All right.
can't think of anything off the top of my head.
We will now move into the second round of public comment. Anybody wishing to address the board, please come to the podium. State your name and address. Please remember to keep your comments to 5 minutes on topic and directed to the board. Anybody wishing to address the board?
Not getting noticed.
Seeing none. We will close the second round of public comment.
Mr. Chair, I move Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors enter into a closed meeting pursuant to provisions of section 2.2-3711A1, section 2.2-3711A3, section 2.2-3711A5, section 2.2-3711A7, section 2.2-3711A8 of the Code of Regime as amended for the purposes of discussing the personnel, employees of the Department of Emergency Services, real estate, disposition of attorney on property in the Union District, Prospective industry, prospective business update in the Columbia District, litigation, Gate Plaza LLC versus Fluvanna County BOS Supervisors. Legal matter, contract user grants, water sewer ordinance, and plans crossroads. Insurance proceeds related to the fire.
So, yeah.
What's that like?
I couldn't tell if he was second or not, but I heard, I'm not gonna,
I'll second it.
I got it second by Go.
Okay.
Motion made by O'Brien, seconded by Go. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye 5-0.
I just heard poop, that's all I heard.
Something.
Mr. Chair, I move the closed meeting be adjourned and the Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors convene again in open session. Be it resolved, the Board of Supervisors does hereby certify to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully covered. Open meeting requirements under section 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. And two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in.
Second. Motion made by Mr. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Hodge. All in favor, Mr. O'Brien?
Call roll.
Aye.
Mr. Goode?
Aye.
Mr. Hodge?
Aye.
Mr. Sheridan? Chair votes aye, 5-0.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hodge, seconded by Mr. Goode. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. 5-0.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I gave it to you, would you?